Hi, everyone. Hi, Keanan. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, afternoon, evening to everyone. You have made it. We have made it to day three of AI Build Week. It's been an eventful week. What do you say, Keanan?
I would say that's accurate, but yeah, thanks everybody for joining us this morning.
Yeah, so we kicked off the week with Keanan here. He showed us how to build an app using real US government web traffic data. Yesterday, Angelique, our developer advocate, she created an app that tracked churn risk using Stripe. And today, Keanan will show us how to go from a spreadsheet to a fully functioning app. And so, as is the case, or I guess tomorrow is our last session, and Alexis, our enterprise solutions engineer, he will walk you through building production ready apps on top of your data. And that is actually EMEA friendly. So, for all the folks in different time zones, that is at 7 a.m. Pacific time or 2 p.m. GMT. So, make sure you sign up for our final day of AI Build Week. It will definitely be a great session. And for all of those who are new here, AI Build Week is a really interactive session. The first part of it, Keanan will be going through a hands-on demo. All of the resources so you could build along are in the chat. I'll post them again shortly for all the folks that just joined. And it's meant to be really interactive. So we have a big portion of it that is Q&A. If you're like, I don't want question, I don't have any questions or answers, they're really lively conversations. We've answered, all over the place, a lot of different questions. I think it's really interesting and useful. We kind of get into some like developer holes. So anyway, join us for that portion. Drop your questions in the chat, in the Q&A, in the community forum, wherever you're watching. We also have some different polls. And so, yeah, to get us started, as always, we want to know, where are you tuning in from? So yesterday we had people from all over the world, even the Cancun airport. So we want to know where you are joining from. Set the scene, tell us where you are in the chat. And all right, Keanan, take it away.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, let's get going. Hey, everybody. Good to see everybody. And it's always cool, like Sarah said, to see folks from around the world and all different time zones. So we appreciate you chiming in. Cool. I see Pakistan, Vienna, Mexico City. That's awesome. Good to see everybody. So, like Sarah mentioned, we're going to get right into it. And we're going to talk about today how to turn spreadsheets into AI generated apps in Retool. Spreadsheets are great. They're super powerful. And for the folks who are Excel wizards, like they are amazing at using them. But they start to break down even in like a Google Sheets sort of way when you have to share them with your team, when you want to do more complicated things with them. And so we'll take a look at kind of how to take those to the next level, even if you're not someone who is comfortable, writing all of the code that's needed to generate a full web application. So let's dive right in. For those who have been here this week, it's a little bit of a review, so we'll go quickly through it. But if you missed it a couple weeks ago, Retool introduced a new kind of concept, which we're calling enterprise AppGen. And what that means is that we want to give folks the ability to generate fully functional enterprise applications on top of their data, running in their own hosting environment and secure by default, right? So you can already do that with Retool. The kind of gen or the generative perspective is something that's new. And so on the right here, this is kind of what it looks like. You'll see the normal sort of Retool IDE that you're used to. But on the left, this is this new tab, which we're calling Assist, which we'll dive into a little bit today, where you can sort of prompt in natural language the kind of application you want to create. And you can watch Retool go to work, laying out components for you, writing queries for you, and building much of your application for you using the power of AI. So we'll take a look at how that works. But there's three kind of main concepts that I want folks to look at today. And that's that unlike a lot of the other AI build tools that are out in the market, Enterprise AppGen inside of Retool is built on top of your data. So you've been able to connect resources, other business systems, data of all types into Retool for years. But this is not just prototypes we're building. We're going to build actual applications that bring our data in and incorporate them from the very start. So that's what we're going to take a look at with some of our spreadsheet data today. Secondly, these applications are deployed to your cloud. So for those customers who use Retool Cloud, they're deployed into our sort of safe and secure environment. If you choose to self-host Retool, those applications that you're creating are deployed into that self-hosted environment, which obviously you have sort of full control over. So that's what makes Enterprise AppGen a little bit different than just generating applications with AI. And number three, obviously, when we're dealing with sensitive data, we want it to be secure by default. And so that means you can enforce all of your organization's single sign-on rules, your access controls, and all those granular permissions that you're used to inside of Retool. In like that can all come into these applications as well, right? So building on top of this platform where your governance rules, your data resources, and your deployment environment is already defined is a huge level up in a lot of different ways. And so we're going to see how that works today. All right, so we said we're going to build a spreadsheet into an app, but let's get a little bit more specific about what we're building today. And this topic is near and dear to my heart, which is why I selected it for us today. For those of you who don't know me, and I imagine for those of you who have attended webinars by me before, a lot of you do feel like you know me a little bit by now, but I am a huge nerd about planes, right? So that's why one of the last times I was in New York, I stayed at the TWA Hotel, which is right next to the airport. You can literally see all the airplanes kind of taking off and landing from your window. That's why I have a virtual version of myself learning how to fly in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And that's why recently I started doing this in real life as well. So what I've learned through kind of all of this nerding out and all this research is there are a ton of airports, both in the US and all around the world, and not just the, Chicago O'Hare or Charles de Gaulle in Paris or LAX, like these big airports. There are a lot of these small airports as well. This one you see here in this picture is right near my relative's house in, Iowa, which is a state in the middle of the US. It doesn't have an air traffic control tower. It sees maybe 3 or 4 kind of commercial flights a day. And so there are all of these airports like this all around the world. And so I get interested in seeing, where those are, if there are ones that are close to me that, once I finish all of my pilot training, like I can fly to, things like that. And so I wanted to build, a Retool app to sort of help me visualize all that. And so what I found was this website or organization called Our Airports basically publishes a CSV file, a comma separated value file, or essentially a spreadsheet of information about all of the different airports all around the world, right? It's a huge CSV file. I think it's about 12 megabytes, but it's available here on GitHub. If you want to go take a look, you can just look for Our Airports data. And they have all sorts of different information. You can see there's a CSV about the airports, but there's also a CSV about the radio frequencies that air traffic control uses or what runways are available. So all sorts of data that's here. We're just going to focus on this airports CSV for today. So if you look at this, though, we click on this, it's not going to show in GitHub because it's too large. It's a 12 megabyte CSV, which for a pure text file, that's pretty big. So for the purposes of this demo, I've had to split this up into a few different files, and we'll see why in a second. But all of these kind of raw data files, if you want to work on this demo yourself, are available in that resources link that folks have been sharing in the chat. So there you'll find all the data for this demo, a couple of the prompts we use, as well as a link to the deck if you want to take a look at any of the slides. So we have this CSV. It's giant. It's a 12 megabyte CSV. It's not super useful because it's hard to kind of search through it or filter down to only airports and certain criteria. And so that got me to start thinking, could we build this into a web app, right? And so if we want to do this in Retool, we have a couple different options. But as sort of my inspiration, if folks have seen this website, it's called Nomad List. And basically, now it looks like it's rebranded to nomads.com. But essentially what it is if you're a digital nomad, there are a lot of cities around the world where you could, move to and work and live. And so, they assembled this entire data set of all these different cities and, ranked them on things like cost and availability of internet and how safe it was and all that stuff. So we want to make something similar, but for our list of airports, right? And you can see, instead of being just, a spreadsheet, this turns it into something much more visual and interactive. And so we're going to do the same thing in the app that we built. All right. So one of the key ways we're going to do this inside of Retool is using something called RetoolDB. And what this is it's a fully hosted Postgres database that's available for you inside of Retool. So if you don't have an external database or you're sort of not comfortable, administering your own database, Retool comes with a database that you can use. And so what I've done here is imported some of my CSV data into Retool database, and it's automatically sort of set up all of my different columns with all of my different data points. And you'll see that this looks suspiciously like a spreadsheet. So if you're familiar with kind of the mode of editing spreadsheets and configuring them, this interface will feel very familiar to you. The difference is this data is now actually in a database, which means we can write database queries against it, or we can have AI write database queries against it for us, which we'll see in just a little bit. But like I said, if you have a CSV file that you want to add to Retool database, you can just go up here add create a table, and there's this import from CSV button, which lets you just drag and drop your CSV right on here. The caveat being, RetoolDB currently has a limit of 3 megabytes for a CSV file import. Like I said, it's a text-only file, so 3 megabytes even is quite a lot of text. So that's why in the resources folder that folks have been linking in the chat, you'll see our 12 megabyte airport database kind of broken up into multiple CSV files, which you can then import and build up, the full table like we have here in this setup. So we've got all of our data in here. You can see we can scroll for quite a long time, and there are all sorts of small airports, heliports, airports that are actually closed, seaplane airports, all types of different things. So we have all of our data here in Retool database, which means it's now a resource that's available to us inside of Retool. If you want to store your data somewhere else, there's plenty of options for that. And you can go over to our integrations page and see all of these different options. So for example, if your data was in Google Sheets instead of in an actual kind of spreadsheet or CSV file, you could integrate directly with Google Sheets and use that as your data source. If you have Postgres, MySQL, or any of these other resources that you need to set up, you can configure those in Retool, put all your credentials in, create the necessary permissions, and then anyone in your team can, within those permissions, use those resources to build within their own apps. So we're going to take a look at RetoolDB specifically today, but there are over 100 integrations here that you can take a look at and use when you're building your own Retool apps. All right, very cool. So let's build what I'm tentatively calling airport list, right? Before we start, I just wanted to flag 3 different concepts that I want you all to keep an eye out for as we're building. We'll call these out as we're going, but once the AI starts to get going, things kind of happen a little bit quickly. So I wanted to mention these ahead of time. Number 1, at mentioning resources. You'll see in my prompt that I'm specifically instructing the assist inside of Retool to use RetoolDB because that's where we put our data. I'll do that by, just like I might tag someone in a message in Slack, I'll just say at RetoolDB, and I'll be able to get the AI will be able to get access to that resource, right? This works for any of the resources across our platform. So any resource you have configured in Retool, you can basically app mention this way, and we are rolling out support and even broader capabilities for assist to use those resources every week. The engineering team is very busy. Secondly, because this is built into Retool and is not a separate platform like you might see with trying to build an app with ChatGPT or Claude or Replit or V0 or any of those, Assist has full context on if you're editing an existing app, what components are already on the canvas. If you're building a new app, like what sort of components are available, what resources are available, where your data lives. It can dive into your databases and look at how your data is set up and configured, and that helps it build better, more purpose-built applications for what you're trying to do. So we'll see an example of that as we go. But Assist is native to the Retool platform, which means it knows everything about how your Retool environment's configured, what components are available, how your data is set up, and that allows it to build better applications. And number 3, I think everyone at this point has heard a horror story or two about how AI has gone, completely off the rails when given a request. And so that's why by default in Retool, every time Assist is writing a query for you, it's basically going to stop and let you inspect the query so that you can be sure that in addition to using the permissions that are built into your Retool account, it's not doing anything you don't want it to do. And so we'll take a look at how we can sort of relax those guardrails a little bit as we go. But by default, we want to make sure that you know everything that's going on inside your application as it's being built. So with that, let's dive into the demo. So I'm going to jump over here into my IDE instead of Retool. And if folks are familiar with the sort of like blank Retool canvas that they normally see when they get into Retool, you'll notice that in my case, the Assist tab was popped open here. And so that is basically where we're going to put our prompt. So let me actually go grab this real quick. In the sort of cooking show style that folks have come to expect from webinars from me, we do have a pre-written prompt here for us. And again, if you want to just copy and paste this prompt, it's available in that resources folder that we have shared. So here's what I'm going to ask it to do. I'm going to say, please help me create airport list similar to Nomad list, right? I'm including that reference here because at its core, Assist is using LLMs from companies like OpenAI and Anthropic, which have been trained on the entire internet. So just by mentioning Nomad list, it will know a little bit about how that website works, how it's set up, kind of the aesthetic that I'm going for. And so that's just helpful context for the AI to have. So I want to create airport list using the airports table in RetoolDB. And so this is where I can just app mention RetoolDB. And now it's going to know to go into Retool database and look for the airports table, right? So what I wanted to do is wanted to give a container with a list of all the available airports. I want the name and the location, like most importantly, because that's basically what I care about. And then I'm saying clicking on a particular airport should open a drawer, which is a Retool component on the side with all of the details, right? In the drawer, I want a map of where the airport is, and I want to like have a point on the map, basically. So I'm telling it more about the interface that I want. I'm not specifically saying, use this Retool component or position it this way. I'm going to let it make those decisions itself. And I don't actually know if drawer is the name of the Retool component, but because it has that full context that we talked about earlier, it will be able to choose sort of the best components for the job given my description here. So we're going to hit enter on that, and we're going to see it start to go here. And I'm going to just kind of talk along as we go to talk about some of the things that are actually happening here behind the scenes, right? So first, we see it's, as many AI tools are, very agreeable and says, great, I'll help you create an airport list app. And right away, it basically starts making a plan for itself, right? So it's going to first go into Retool database and check for the schema of the database table. This basically tells it what columns it has access to and what data is available to it. So that's an important first step because it won't know what interfaces it's able to create if it doesn't first know what data is available. So it's going to do that. It's going to design our UI with our drawer that we specifically asked for. It's going to create a technical specification for our data flow, which basically means any database queries, code steps, or anything like that. How do those hook up to the components, and how do the components get data from those queries, et cetera? And then it's going to update its own plan with the specific steps to put these components on the canvas and all of that, right? So it looks like here in step one, it found the table that we had just imported to Retool database. It has all of these different fields in it, right? So because I asked for name and location, it found the name and municipality fields that are going to be in the list view. It noted that the coordinates are stored as text. And so for the map component, it's going to need to figure out how to parse those. And it said that all the details it found in that one table, and so it doesn't have to go get any extra data sources. This is a really good point because if, for example, I wanted to, have something where I would get, live weather at a particular airport as one of the details that I wanted in that drawer, I could ask it for that, and then it would probably come back and say, great, I don't have this data. Can you give me access to a weather API or something like that, where we could hook that up as another resource, and it would be able to start using that data in real time as well. So it then goes on to create a wireframe, which is basically just a text view of how all our components are going to work. It creates that technical specification that we talked about, which is basically how the different components get data from the various queries. So it's going to write a get airports query, which is going to flow data into the airports table, things like that. So all of these planning steps are what it's doing here. And now it says, okay, it's got it. It's going to create the structure. It's going to add the components and then basically do all the updates and polishing to make this app. And if you've been paying attention over here, you've already started to see that it's basically laying out all of our different components in real time, right? So it's putting in our titles, it's dropping in our tables. And over here on the left, we get that same sort of running view with exactly what's going on, right? So we can see that, for example, it put the title on the canvas right here where it said airport name text. But then it updated all these different things. And so we can see that it changed the title to airport list, right? And that's exactly what we see up here. So all of these steps you can basically inspect and see in real time what's happening. So now that it's feeling pretty good about the component setup as we have it right now, it has started to write a query, right? So this is the get airports query that it told us it was going to write. And what it wants to do is say, fetch all the airports with the key fields. So it's going to run a select statement on our Retool database table. It's going to get from the airports table and it's going to order the airports by their name in alphabetical order, ascending, right? So this looks pretty good to me. And because I trust it to run queries against our Retool database, I'm going to go down here and say, I automatically approve all queries on this particular resource. So anytime you want to query RetoolDB on this table, like go ahead and do it. That's totally fine. If I had multiple resources and I wanted to speed this up even further, I could say that I wanted to auto approve all queries. But that's just depending on your sort of comfort level. So I'm going to say, looks good. Run any of these queries against RetoolDB that you want to. And it's going to then continue to go off and do exactly that. So we'll see here, we kind of have these dueling views, right? On the right-hand side, we see our application coming to life. On the left-hand side, we see, what the AI is actually doing for us. And the key thing to keep in mind is that it's not generating sort of any new format or anything different that you haven't seen before. I could be following these exact same steps and laying out all of these components myself. The difference is just AI is doing it for me. But what that means is that if we want to, for example, look at our table component in the inspector, like it's actually setting up the table the same way that we would. You could see it just added a row action here, which we'll take a look at in a second. But it's deciding what columns to configure, what row actions to use, if it needs any sort of event handlers, etc. Which means that when I get done, when the AI gets done generating for me, this is just a retool app that I myself can dive into and configure and change. So if I want to configure it differently how the components are working, if I want to jump over here and say, oh, I know I approved this query, but I actually need another field, I'm not forced to re-prompt the assist tab. I can basically make those edits myself, either by configuring the components or actually diving all the way into the code for a given query, right? So we'll take a look at when that might be the easier way forward in just a second here, because we'll probably want to make some edits to this once it's done. And sometimes it's easier to just make those edits yourself if they're small versus leaning on the AI for making edits that are more broad across your entire application, or asking it, in this case, for the initial generation, right? So it made some updates here. It looks like it added this click action to open the drawer, and it added a button in the drawer and added an action to close the drawer, right? So step 11, basically it's saying, okay, here is your app and it looks good to me. So let's close the assist tab and actually take a look for ourselves, right? So we've got, looks like all of our airports here in this table. And I'm looking and seeing that there are a lot of these fields that maybe don't have a bunch of as much data in them as I would like. So let's go over here and just refresh our columns, right? We're going to say that the ID is the primary, but then we're going to take a look at what of these columns do we actually care about, right? So maybe this like coordinates column we don't care about, we can hide. The GPS code we probably don't care about. Local code, some of these are a little bit sort of like behind the scenes values that we don't necessarily think our user needs to see. So we have this here, and it looks like it is now a little bit more readable after we've hidden a few of these columns here. So let's take a look at this type column. This is one I would expect to be filled out because we do have, we saw in our database that airports are basically grouped by types. So let's take a look first at our query to see if there's some reason why that is not showing up properly. We can run this and take a look at the output. Again, because this is quite a big table, this query might take a minute to run. But we can see that it looks like type, small airport, closed, etc. Those are coming through in the data. So for some reason, they're not coming through in the table, which is interesting. So we can debug this ourselves. If we want to kind of dive in here and take a look, we can also just ask assist. It doesn't look like the type field is rendering the table. Can you take a look? And so what this will do is basically, again, it has the full context of your application. It can then just go through and see, okay, it'll look at the query, it'll look at the table and say, okay, is there some misconfiguration here? How is the data flowing through? And so it will be able to do that sort of investigation for us here. So hopefully we will get a little bit more information about exactly what's going on and why there was an issue with getting this in the first place. All right, cool. So it looks like it said the type column is configured with format tags, which expects an array of values, but the database returns a single string value. And so it changed it to format tag. We can see that change exactly right here. And now, perfect. We see that we have this type column showing up perfectly. So again, if we had been over here in the inspector, we probably could have found that ourselves here in this tags configuration. But Assist was able to really quickly find that for us. And now we have this being sorted by type. So cool. This looks pretty good, but to me, I don't know about you guys, this to me looks very similar to the spreadsheet format that we were just looking at earlier. There's no sort of advantage here scrolling all of these rows over scrolling all of these rows in Excel, right? We do have the drawer set up, which we'll come back to in a minute. But if we click on this little eye icon over here, we do have our drawer with all of our details, which is helpful. But still, like I can't look for, show me all the airports that are like close to me or airports with a specific name or stuff like that. So let's go back over and ask Assist for that. Before we do, I'm just going to click on this right here to create a release. Basically, what this means is we're saving a sort of checkpoint at this stage, which allows us to, you can see here, also revert back to this version if we ever want to. So this gives me a little more comfort with asking Assist to do things for me, because I know that, okay, I have a version that I can revert back to if I need to. And if you're using source control within Retool, this hooks into that as well. And so it allows you to just make kind of incremental changes as you go and feel a lot more confident. So I'm going to say to Assist here, this looks great. Can we add a set of filters above the table to allow users to filter by airport name or by, let's see, what other data could we filter by here? Maybe country. Actually, no, type, right? Because we want to be able to say, okay, show me, for example, like I would want to be able to filter out like the closed airports, for example, or show me only small airports, because I'm not capable of flying at big airports yet or something like that. So we're going to ask it to do that for us. And again, this is not a very specific prompt. I'm kind of letting Assist decide what it wants to do here. And so you can give it as much detail as you want to. If you remember in our initial starting prompt, we gave it quite a bit of detail. We asked it about, a container. We wanted the name and location. We wanted the drawer. We gave it the specific format for how to set up the map. All of that stuff, we gave it that information. So you can make it detailed if you want to, but it's also pretty good at using that Retool context that it has to infer what you're asking it and build it a certain way. So we can see it looks like it's creating those two filters that we asked it for. I'm going to zoom out here so we're able to see a little bit more. So it's created the filters, and now it's, it added our label for us. It's adding our placeholder text for us, which is really nice. And this dropdown now should have all the different types in it as well, right? So that looks great. And it's telling us that it's updating our table as well, which is cool. So it's checking against that. It's looking at some of these other pieces here. And again, if we want to see anytime anything that's going on, we can just look into these containers that are closed. So it looks like it's rearranging some of this stuff in our drawer as well for us to make a little bit nicer of a layout. And so let me just see, while this is working, you can also, if you're not actively working on a component that's being edited, you can be over here in the canvas kind of making edits and doing things as well. So let me just see if this is configured yet. So small airport doesn't look like it's filtering yet. So it's probably still working on that query. So let's give it a minute to run here. While we're doing that, just a reminder that if you have questions or want to go back and kind of show anything else of this again, please, feel free to drop those in the chat. We'll have plenty of time at the end, but we do have time for some of those as well if we want to take a look at those in the meantime. So if anything's kind of catching your eye, or you want to talk about a concept, or kind of curious about how a certain thing is working, please don't be shy and drop those in the chat. Folks are keeping an eye on that for us. All right, so it's doing a bunch of sort of reconfiguring here. And again, I'm just going to take a look at this query and see what it's actually changing. So it looks like it added this where filter. And what this is going to do is basically allow us to type in this field and have it sort of filter down our query, which is pretty cool. So it looks like it's complete with that. So let's go ahead and give this a try. I'm going to close Assist so I have the whole canvas here. I'm going to pick medium airport, and you'll see my table gets a spinner. And now the only airports that are in this table are medium airports, right? You can do the same thing. If I go ahead and clear this out, if I want to do a large airport, looks like clearing out reruns the whole query, which that's maybe functionality that I, as a developer of this application, would want to adjust, so that because that query does take quite a long time, we might want to adjust that. And actually, I can just do that right now that I'm thinking of it. You can go over here to our query, and under advanced, I'm going to go ahead and cache the results of this query, right? So this would be useful for if this query was going to run periodically and was going to give me the same data, we can cache this. I'm just going to say this is 60 seconds here on the cache, so that actually we'll bump it down to 10. So that we have that data hopefully coming back a little bit more quickly. I'm hoping that doesn't remove our ability to actually use our filters, but we'll take a look and see. So we saw how long that took to run. If we run this again, we should see it come back a little bit faster because we're just fetching from the cache there. So, okay. So we got our filter by type working. Let me see if we can get if our airport name search is working. So let me scroll down here and take a look at Sure, let's look for maybe airports with the name towers in them, right? So if we search for towers, we'll see that cool. Our airport list is filtered. Looks like it's mostly heliports now. Oh, here we go. A couple small airports, a couple closed airports. So you can see that our sort of real-time sort of interactive typing field is working to filter as well, which is pretty cool. Okay. So we've got kind of our main interface here that's working. Let's take a look at our drawer. We kind of haven't taken a look at very much of that yet. So let's do that. Cool. So let's try and find an airport that I know about. So I am joining from Chicago today. So I'm going to see if O'Hare is here in our data set. Looks like it is. This is the airport that I normally fly out of. So we're going to pop open our drawer and take a look and see what's going on. All right. So it looks like for those of you who are keeping an eagle eye on this before, it moved our map up to the top of our drawer, which is pretty cool. I like that a lot. And here is all of the data about O'Hare. It looks like, though, it's not using the coordinates to populate the map, right? So let's take a look at why that's going on. Okay, so a couple of things I'm seeing here. Number one, if we zoom out, maybe the point is on the map in Chicago. Okay, it looks like it is. So it looks like the only problem here is that our map isn't actually centered around the point, right? So it's centering around San Francisco, which is the kind of default centering point. So let's go ahead and fix that. So again, we don't have to give assist any of the context about our app because it already knows everything that's going on here. But we can just say, can you please center the map around or over the airport by setting, right? What did we see? Yeah, the latitude and longitude fields to the coordinates for the airport. Right. So if I wanted to do this myself, obviously I could go look at this, this transform coordinates for map that it generated, and I could key into these and, do this configuration myself, which we'll see. We'll give it a chance to try and fix it. If it isn't able to do that, we'll take a look at how to do it ourselves. But again, if you don't want to necessarily dive into the code and figure out how this is working and how all that's going, then you can just, prompt your way to asking how it's working, asking it to explain itself, and then make fixes for us. So it says perfect. The map will now automatically center on each airport's location. I've also increased the zoom area to 12. Okay, I think that's a little close. I kind of want to see it in the neighborhood, right? So let's go ahead and dial that back maybe to 10, 8. Yeah, okay, that gives me a better idea of like geographically sort of where it is. So again, I could have asked Assist to do that for me as well. Because it's a single setting, the analogy here in Retool that we kind of like to use sometimes is, you wouldn't ask Alexa to turn on your lights for you if you're standing right next to the light switch. And so in this case, the light switch was right here. We were just able to configure that setting. So we're not overly reliant on this AI assisted technology to do everything for us. Simple things that are really easy to do, and we want a bit more of experimenting. It's easier for me to sit here and like adjust this number than to try and prompt, and ask AI to do this and all these different steps. We'd be sitting here for quite a while, right? So cool. So this map's looking pretty good. Let me just make sure that if I go to a different airport now, that it's going to do that for us. JFK, sure, JFK heliport. Let's look at the drawer for this. Cool. New Mexico. Interesting. I would have assumed that was near New York. But it looks like, yeah, White Sands, New Mexico. Okay, cool. So we now have our map that's generating for us, and it's generating on the actual airport. So let's take a look at Los Angeles. I'm sure there's a lot of these here. Interesting. Yeah, there's too many. Maybe international. Looks like not. Okay. Just wanted another double check. Let's just check this here. Yeah. Okay, cool. Looks like that's in LA as well. Cool. All right. So our map is now working as we would expect. And yeah, basically at this point we have a fully functional application. We can filter our different airports. We can see whatever data we would like in this drawer. Again, just like we did with the table, this is a key value component here. And so we can decide, if like, for example, the ID property isn't super valuable, we could hide that or format it a different way, any of those types of things. But you can see how this probably would have taken me maybe an hour, maybe a couple hours to build if I was doing all this manually. But using the assist functionality in Retool, we were able to put this together relatively quickly and have a working app that we can now hit publish on and share with our team if this is an application we wanted to share with our team. Otherwise, we have software that we can use ourselves. So hopefully this was an interesting look at sort of how we can use AI to get going really quickly. We can also use it to edit existing applications or explain kind of what's going on under the hood, which for folks who have inherited old applications that other people have built is really helpful functionality. And we can also still retain the ability to, in classic Retool fashion, edit any of these components ourselves, or even dive deeper into the queries and the code of what's going on here. So this feature is live for everybody in their Retool accounts. It recently launched in public beta, so absolutely please give us feedback either through any of our traditional support channels or by jumping in the community, or if you get a chat that's either good or bad, you have these thumbs up and thumbs down functionality here. You also have feedback which routes straight to the team to help us improve the system prompts and all sorts of things. So I hope this was helpful. I see some questions coming in the chat, so we're going to get to Q&A in just a second. So please, if you're thinking of questions, post them there. We'll have plenty of time to go through all of those. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, like Sarah mentioned at the beginning, we do have day 4 tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. And we hope to see you all there. So let's take a second here and jump into the questions that we have. Perfect. I am going to actually, unfilter this. All right, number 1, Elliot asks, will it build JavaScript to execute a chain of events rather than identifying all events that fire in parallel? For example, click save, open a dialog, click OK, update data, close the dialog, and refresh a grid. Yeah, good question. So you can absolutely chain events in Retool. So what that looks like is, actually, let me just share my screen and we can see what's going on. So for example, if I wanted something to run, an event to run after my Retool database query ran, I could, click on this event handlers section right here. And so I could set up an event to run when this query was successful. I could also set up an event to run if this query was a failure, right? So that could be like error logging or throwing an alert or something like that. So again, this is Retool specific functionality. So you could prompt assist and say, okay, when this query runs, I want this next query to run, right? And so we did see some examples of that where when we had our queries running, it was doing things like when I clicked on this icon in the table, it's opening the drawer. When I clicked on the close icon, you can see here, it did set up this click handler to close the drawer, to hide the drawer, right? So if you are more prescriptive than I was, you could absolutely chain those event handlers together and instruct it to do that. Or you could use more than a single prompt. You could let it do a one-shot generation, and then you could give it advice and specifics on, okay, great, but now we want to chain this event to that one. So you can be very specific with it, but if it's native functionality to Retool, it's something Assist should be able to handle. Cool. All right, we've got a question here. Can you please confirm if someone has more than a 3 megabyte file? I recall you said you were going to split it. Right. So yeah, I kind of glazed over that, but yes, the data set we're working with here is a 12 megabyte CSV file. And so that will not go into RetoolDB in one shot. And so what I did is I used this site called splitcsv.com. Not affiliated with this in any way, just something that I use when I have big CSV files. And what you're able to do is basically pick a file from here. And so like here's our 12 megabyte file. And you can just basically go in and say, okay, I want to split this. I want to split it. Okay, sorry about that. I want to split it on file size, right? And so a million bytes is a megabyte. So what I did was I just said 2,900,000 bytes, which is just under 3 megabytes. And so what this will do is it'll split our CSV into 4 or 5 different CSV files, which we can then import into RetoolDB one at a time. If you're familiar with using Retool workflows, you can also use something like Retool workflows to do the same sort of process and insert your data into RetoolDB in a more programmatic way But the limit is really just on when you do this sort of import from CSV action here. It just limits the amount just because it's running inside of a web browser that also has limits that we have to respect as well. So that's the functionality there. If you look at the resources folder that's been linked, the split up files are in there. So those you can just drag and drop straight into RetoolDB. But if you want to do it yourself, either using splitcsv.com or building your own, Retool workflow is a good way to do that. Cool. What else? John asks us, can you prompt the AI to allow updating the data from the drawer? Yeah, absolutely. So this is another common question that we get from folks is that, can I, write data back to my database? We've looked at building sort of read-only applications, but absolutely. So let's take a look at, let's see what happens if we do that. So let's say I want to make the airport name editable from within the drawer. Please make this field editable and add a save button that will update the underlying record in the database. Okay, so yeah, because this is connected to our live database and Retool has write access on that database, we can do exactly this, right? So we'll give it a little bit to cook here on this, and we'll come back to it. But we should be able to get something working where we can actually update various fields in the database itself. Good question. All right. Is there any? Let's see. Sorry about that. Is there any configuration to set the LLM regarding naming conventions, code, indentation, or theme? So I would assume this question is about when you're prompting assist. Can you say, always name my queries this way or things like that? So we don't currently have any sort of global rules for that. But, you can always include that in your prompt. So for example, if you joined us a couple weeks ago for Retool Summit, we specified please make the theme of this application look like this with a certain color scheme and that sort of stuff. So, there are ways that you can do that within your prompt. There's no way to define global configurations right now, but that's something the product team is actively looking at. So in the same way you can define, rules for how Claude runs or custom instructions for ChatGPT, we're looking at ways to give organizations and teams the ability to specify rules for assist for their team so that you can make it a more consistent app building experience across your whole team. All right, let's take a look at what's going on over here in our database query. It looks like it changed our text component to an input, which is what we would expect, right? Because we want to be able to have some sort of edit functionality here. So it looks like that's working. It's updating a bunch of the event handlers, which we'll let it do. But it's also, you can notice here, written a database query to update the airport name. So it's going to give us a summary here. What I did, I replaced the name with the editable field. I added a save changes button. And on success, the list automatically refreshes and shows a success notification. So it's asking us if it wants to, if we wanted to build more additional features, but this is kind of the feature set that we asked for right now. So let's do that. Let's go pick one of these near the top of the list here. I guess let's just pick this one. And we will pop open the drawer. And let's give this a capital H, and let's just shorten this a little bit here. Okay, cool. So that looks a little bit different now. And I think my zoom controls are overlapping the save button. Yep, there it is. Okay, and we can see that down here, our update query ran, and now it's running our get query. And so we should be able to see, now that I changed the name, it also changed my alphabetical sort. So yeah, cool. All right, there it is. So it actually did change the data in our underlying database, and then when our table refreshed, now that new data is in here as well. So you could go as far as you wanted to in this. You could make all of these fields editable, only some of them editable. But that's an example of you definitely can build applications that write back to your data source, and those queries can all have their own sets of permissions, things like that too. So super powerful in that way. Okay, Elaine asks, if the data is from CSV files, it's presumably static. How do you update the data in particular? And can you update the data from an outside source, like another file or an API? Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to clarify, our data started as a CSV file, but because of this exact reason that you're asking about, we imported it into Retool database, which means it's now in a data source that is much more able to be updated, right? So because it's database, we can do things like, changing the data like we just did, because it's no longer just static data in a CSV file. Another option that folks like to opt for sometimes is to store it in Google Sheets, where you can get the flat file style of a CSV with the dynamic nature of a database. So that's the reason why we did that inside of a database here. And that was one of the first steps, is bring the CSV into a database. So cool. All right, we still got time for a few more questions, so we're going to get to all these that we have here, but the folks behind the scenes are going to put a quick poll up on the screen for you real quick. And really what we're interested in knowing is, we do these, it takes us some time to prepare. And so we want to make sure that we're delivering, content that you all find valuable. So we've got, 3 options here for you. If you're really a big fan of what we're doing here today, that's great. If you've got more questions, that's fantastic. We'll get to those very shortly. And if you're looking for something a little bit different, we want to know that too. So fill that out for us, please. That'd be very helpful. Cool. All right, couple more. Federico asks, what are the AI assistance limits? I was building an app yesterday, but the limit blocked me from continuing the process. Yeah, so good question. Obviously, as with anything AI, this is using tokens behind the scenes, and there's some sort of limitation on how much sort of inference we can provide to folks. So this is a limit that we're kind of currently evaluating on an ongoing basis, but all of the Retool plans from free plan all the way up to enterprise get a certain amount of credits at the beginning of the month. Right now on the free plan, you get 100 credits for assist free of charge. And on our paid plans right now, we're rolling out assist on an unlimited basis. So at least until the end of the year, while we're kind of in this open beta period, anybody on a paid plan will have unlimited usage of the assist functionality that we showed today. So if you are on one of those plans and we're still kind of encountering those limits, please get in touch with us either through the community or any of your normal support channels that you use. But we really want to get this into the hands of folks and allow them to start building with it. So we're trying to open that up as much as we can for folks. Cool. Yeah, and I think hopefully, that answers the other question, Ali, in the chat. Is there a limit to AI performing actions, or do we need to pay for it? So again, this is something that's still definitely evolving, but our goal between now and the end of the year especially is to get this in the hands of as many people as we can. Okay, cool. So we have a question here. Is there a way to see how many tokens have been used and how much has been charged? Yeah, so one of the ways to do this is if you're an admin of your organization, you can monitor usage in your organization settings. So I believe I'm an admin on this organization. We can go look at this and see what this looks like. But the long story short here is that, yes, we want to make it very clear to folks, what sort of tokens and credits are being used and how that is working. So we do expose that in a couple different ways. Let's take a look here. I want to make sure that I can find this. Yeah, it looks like maybe I need some additional permissions on my environment here. But you will be able to see inside of the settings, if you are an organizational admin, the usage on your particular organization. So that would be across any of the users that you have in your org. And we're also going to be exposing that inside the actual assist interface as well, so that folks can see, exactly what's going on and what their usage is at, how it's going, all that sort of stuff. So more work to be done there and more stuff coming there, but we do want to make that very transparent for folks, is kind of how much you're using and what's going on. Cool. All right, Steven has a question. Understood about token limits. Is there any context window or memory limits that might influence larger, more complex app development conversations? Yeah, good question. So obviously the underlying AI models have, a limit to their context. That limit seems to be continually expanding, but there always is a limit there to the context that models have. And due to the fact that we are doing some pretty context heavy operations with things like passing components and all of that information into the LLM and things that come with our system prompt and all that stuff, in addition to the information that you're putting in, there is a limit here. But I will say the team is constantly working on using kind of engineering tricks, things like sub agents and saving context via tool calls and other stuff like that to make this even more context efficient. So it's a little bit hard to say sort of when that context level will be reached, but I will say that I've gone through some pretty complex builds with like multiple sort of feature iterations, and it's been able to maintain that context. If you start running into things where it's not behaving like you would expect, or you feel like it's losing that context, you can click this plus button up here to create a brand new thread. And again, one of the first things that we'll do when you kick off this thread is look at the state of your app and very efficiently sort of pull all that back into context, right? So if you feel like you're reaching a point of sort of diminishing returns, that's where you could just sort of kick off a new thread and say, okay, the first thing it will do will be look at all your queries, look at all your components. And so it will refresh that context for itself pretty quickly. All right, cool. Byron asks, is there a way to turn an actual spreadsheet that might contain formatting, formulas, logic, and macros into a Retool app rather than just a flat file? Yeah, so good question. So formatting, formulas, and logic. I mean, formulas and logic are kind of like the queries that we looked at as part of what we were building today. So if you gave it a file and said, hey, here are my Excel formulas that are nested in this spreadsheet, recreate these as either JavaScript or SQL queries, that would be one way to go about that. But also, if you have all of this in a Google Sheet instead of just a flat file, that's another way to get a little bit more of that dynamic nature as well by using the Google Sheet as the underlying resource. So a couple different options there, but Assist is pretty good at understanding things like Excel formulas, taking specific formatting feedback, et cetera. So as much of that detail as you can sort of prompt it with, it should be able to do for you. All right. Cool. Another question here. If we connect Snowflake / BigQuery tables, will the AI understand the requests to build interactive databases? Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question and a great use case, right? So if you remember in the demo, one of the first steps that we did was that we gave Assist access to our resource and said, hey, it's the airports table in RetoolDB. If I had instead said, it's the analytics table in Databricks, or it's the, customer data table in Snowflake, or it's the, page view events in BigQuery, the first step that Assist would do would be exactly the same. It looks at the data, looks at the schema, and sees exactly what's going on there, and uses that to make its decisions and interpretation about how to build the application, right? So you can absolutely point it in a database and say, here's where my data is and what it looks like. And it will use that resource connection to look at that information. So in a similar way, as we looked at on Monday, we had hooked up a government data analytics API instead of a database. And the same thing, Assist, before it built our app around it, it queried the API a couple times. It used the open API schema to understand how the API was set up and what information it did have access to. And so that sort of introspection and inspection step happens with any of our resources, whether you're using a database or Snowflake or an external API or Salesforce or anything else, right? Cool. Yeah, all right. We have one more question here. How do you provide access to your app to specific users through some sort of authentication? Yeah, so this is a question that might best be answered sort of in our community, but what the core of the Retool platform, one of the things is that you can give access to specific users on the basis of kind of their group and user permissioning. So if you're talking about how to give access to Assist to specific users, that's something that we can kind of walk you through in the community. So please head over there and make a post. But if you're talking about the actual end application, that is part of Retool's sort of granular access controls, where you can say, okay, what users have access to this application? And that basically looks like, over here in our settings, if we click on, roles and permissions, we can say, okay, actually, let's look at groups. So we can say like our read-only users, they should only have access to, specific applications, right? So if I make myself a read-only user, I can say, okay, this person only has access to specific applications, or things like that. So all of these things are configurable within the Retool settings if you're talking about application access. But if you're talking about access to Assist, that's something we can definitely help you with as well. All right. Can you import more data via CSV import from the app? Yeah, good question. So this is if like you already have an existing data table, can you import more CSV data here? And so the answer is yes, you can, either by flowing that into importing CSV to current table right down here. That's another option. So you would just click on this. And again, it's the exact same flow. You would just drag and drop another CSV in there. Or if you created this through something like a Retool workflow, you would just run the workflow again with a different set of underlying data, and that same process would flow all the way through. So absolutely, like I said, this data set, I had to split up into 5 different CSV files to stay under that 3 megabyte limit. And so the way that I got all of that in here was to do the initial import from CSV, but then when you have a particular table selected, you can click on this plus down here and click on import CSV to current table, as well as a bunch of different other actions you can do in here. All right. How does the AI handle rolling back changes? Can you specify the request to go back to from an iteration from a point in time? Yeah, good question. So you remember, if we look back at our thread here, at one of these points, I basically created a release, and you could even see outside of the releases that I created, Assist is automatically saving versions to the history at various points in its development, right? So after it created this map centering logic, it created a version here, and we can at any point click, revert to this version. So for example, this is where we started making our text editable in the drawer. If we decided we didn't want to do that, we could revert to this version right before we made that request. And it will basically, you'll notice, sort of roll back all of those changes. And so now when we click into our drawer, once our query finishes running here, you'll see that, our name value isn't editable anymore, right? So you'll see that you can either have the option to save releases at certain versions, especially if you're using source control inside of Retool, but it will also sort of auto checkpoint itself as it goes along, and you can revert to those versions at any point in time. All right, a couple more questions here. How does the 3 megabyte limit apply if you use Google Sheets? Yeah, so the 3 megabyte limit is only if you're importing CSVs into Retool through the browser, right? So if you want to be able to click this, say import from CSV and drop a file here, that's where that 3 megabyte limit applies. If you're hooking up to an external database or anything else that's not importing a CSV into Retool database, you won't see that same limit. But this is just because this is a tool that's running inside the browser. There are various technological limitations and performance limitations that make it so we need to limit the amount of data that can be imported this way. But that's purely a like file upload through the browser limitation. So there are ways to get around that, and that doesn't apply to other resources either. So cool. All right. And I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more. Can you create a new record through this tool? If you want to add anything to the database, can you use RetoolDB like you would with any spreadsheet? Or if you want to do this in the app, then prompt for that capability of your app. Yeah. So if you wanted to add more data to this data set, 2 ways to do it, as the person who asking the question mentioned. Number 1, I can go ahead and click down here. I can click on add row, and then I can fill out all this information manually. I could also, well, that's not going to work because I didn't put in any data. I could also go into my app and say, okay, great, we have our drawer. That's awesome. But I want a modal, like a pop-up. I want to be able to click a button that says create new airport. I want to have a modal pop-up that I can then fill in all the details and have it put that data into the database for me automatically. So that's something we could absolutely ask Assist over here to build for us as kind of an additional feature now that our app is built and working. And so those would be the 2 ways you could get extra data into the app. Cool. And last one we got here, what about the aesthetic side of apps? Will AI cater to your prompts? Yeah, absolutely. So this is a good question that we get from a lot of folks. Our kind of base app here that we've built looks very like Retool app style. But Retool has some pretty robust theming capabilities, the ability to customize your CSS, build custom components as well. So if you have a custom app theme set up, or if you just want your app to adhere to a particular kind of well-known color scheme, you can absolutely ask Assist to do that for you. So I could, for example, ask it, okay, we want this to be, like Netflix colors, or we want this to be red, white, and blue branded, or we want it to be blue and orange. We have the Chicago Bears here in Chicago. Maybe I want it to be blue and orange, like Bears colors, that sort of thing. So you can do that, and it will go through and modify your components for you. It will also, if you ask for a specific theme that you already have set up, you'll be able to prompt it to do that as well. Something we are working on that a lot of folks have asked for is basically the ability to import a Figma design. So if you have a design for an app done in Figma, you'll be able to just upload that into Assist and say, here's kind of the design inspiration for my app. We need to build it like this, right? So All of those things are coming. It's something we are pretty focused on, but this upcoming year, we really want to allow folks to build even better UIs in Retool. And so that's something we are actively working on enabling. But you can already do quite a bit today just by asking Assist, for a particular color scheme or certain design updates.
All right.
All right. Yeah,
Oh,
welcome back, Sarah.
Keanan, great job. That was awesome. I think, hopefully everyone learned something. And if we didn't get to your question, we will get to them in the community, and you could see all of the recaps, all of the Q&A. They are all posted in the community along with the recording. And you could also find it in our YouTube channel. Um, if you liked learning alongside us and also with other builders, you will love the community forum. You just go to community.retool.com. There's so many different things to learn from others. You can get help with whatever problem you're experiencing and also get a lot of inspiration in the show and tell category. We have some different challenges that are fun, so you could get involved. Like right now, we have a challenge running just for another 2 days where you can earn $25 in a gift card if you post something, your assist creation using the tag AppGen. So go to the community and do that. Also, make sure you sign up for the final day tomorrow of AI Build Week. It is EMEA friendly, and so go ahead and sign up. The link is in the chat. Thank you so much to our team, Daniel, who is behind the scenes doing all the live stream setup, Keanan, who did 2 awesome presentations. Thank you so much. Angelique, who went yesterday, and Alexis will be presenting tomorrow, as well as people behind the scenes helping us out. Thank you so much, and we will see you tomorrow and in our community forum. Thank you, Keanan. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.